Hello, world history students. I'm sorry that I'm not there with you today. You've got a lot of notes to cover today on YouTube. So first we're going to talk about the bubonic plague. That's going to be pretty quick. And then we're going to take some notes on the late Middle Ages. So as we go through the PowerPoint, please just pause this video and make sure that you get everything written down in your notes as we go, because I'm going to move a lot faster than I do in class. All right, let's get started. So today we're going to talk about the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague is also called the Black Plague or the Black Death. It was a super deadly disease that swept through Europe and killed a whole lot of people in the period of just a few years, which set the stage for the Renaissance to kind of bring Europe back to a point of rebirth. So the plague began in Asia, over in China. We'll look at a map in a second. And as trade expanded, it affected parts of the Muslim world, and then it moved into Europe as well. In 1347, a trading ship came into Sicily and then moved up to the coast of Italy to Venice, where it had rats that were carrying fleas that were infected with the Black Plague that got off the boat that went and infected the people and brought the Black Death to Europe. So here's the origins of the plague. Over here in China, it moved along the Silk Road, and it moved along these sea routes that went up through the Arabian Peninsula to get back to the Mediterranean Sea. The disease was called the Black Death because it produced purplish, blackish spots on the skin. We'll look at a picture in just a second here. The symptoms, other than this blackening of the skin, included something called buboes, which were swelling of the lymph nodes in the groin and armpits. That would be a sign that you had the plague. You would also probably get a really high fever. You would be delirious. You wouldn't know what was going on around you, and probably you would die. Though not everybody did. Some people did have some immunity to the disease and lived. But if you got the Black Death, you had about 72 hours until you were going to die. So let's look at some pictures of what these buboes look like. So here is a medieval period picture of people with the plague. Ew. And then here are people who have parts of their bodies that have been infected with the plague. It's pretty gross. So this is this blackening of the skin. Ew. This is a plague doctor, and plague doctors couldn't really help people, but they did wear these masks, and they would fill the noses with flowers because the plague smelled really bad, and also there were dead bodies everywhere, and that smelled really, really bad. The bodies were literally piling up in the streets, and they would wear these long sleeves and these coverings to keep themselves totally away from the infection itself. Here's a picture of people dying in the streets during the time of the plague. All right, so let's go back to our PowerPoint notes. So here we have the plague entering into Europe through Genoa and Venice in 1348. Then the disease went north into France, Germany, and England. So the disease is moving up, up, up. It's also spreading out towards Spain, into North Africa, and we have plague instances down here in the Middle East and around the Black Sea as well. So here are the routes the plague is moving by, and then the shaded parts are the parts that have already been infected. We can see it spreading, right? The yellow is all the areas of new infection by the end of 1348. And then by 1349, you look at this map, here's the Mediterranean Sea in the center, and what I think this should look like to you is the Roman Empire. Right? This is basically the Roman Empire. And it took this disease 2 years to spread throughout everything that had been Rome and a little bit beyond that. Here we have these blue pockets. These are areas where there was an immunity to plague. It seemed like the people there were immune. Very few people died. And some people believe that these must have been areas where there had been a prior exposure, that enough people in that area had in their family histories people who had been exposed to plague, because there were earlier waves of it. that they were immune to the disease. Major effects of the plague. Town populations fell by 2/3 to 3/4 in some places. The serfs left their manors, if they were still there after the Crusades, to find better paying jobs, and nobody's going to stop you from doing that if you're a serf when you are running away from the plague. There were places in Europe where Jewish communities were blamed for bringing on the plague. There was a popular belief among some Christians at the time that Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus, which is one way of interpreting some of the New Testament. There were also other really anti-Semitic beliefs at this time, but in any case, some people thought that this was a punishment because the Jews were responsible for Jesus' death, and so they drove them from their homes, and in some cases there were large-scale massacres. The church kind of lost all its power. You could pray, but the plague was still going to come, and many priests stopped doing what they were supposed to do to protect people from the plague, and so, people lost a lot of their trust in the institution of the church. People stopped trading because there were fewer people to trade with, and you needed the people to stay home and take care of the areas where they lived. And basically, society fell apart for a little while. But it rebuilt itself, and that's what's super important and leads us into the Renaissance in the 1400s. Okay, that's it for your plague notes. Take a moment to switch to your late Middle Ages note sheet and video. Get up, get a drink of water, move around a little bit, and then take the rest of your notes. Thanks, guys.